Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a beautiful and exciting guest with me. I have Marina Seren, who is a channel, ET contact experiencer and guide, and also who is a ET human hybrid. Hi, Marina. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for inviting me. I'm fine, and you?
Good. Really excited to dive into this conversation. So I'll kind of pass it over to you. I'd love to hear just a little bit about you. Maybe if you feel called to start with how you got started on this path and what led you to the knowing that you are both ET and human, and wherever you'd like to go with that.
Yes. So I was 15 years old when all of this started to me. I remember I was in school and my dream was to become a physicist. I was exhibiting this excitement towards the idea of the fields of physics, metaphysics, and the universe, the cosmos. So I was orienting myself to go that way, to study the universe on a bigger perspective, as well as the smaller perspective, which is, atoms and particles, to get like a greater idea of the structure of the universe and existence. So I started to realize when I was meditating about it, I started to realize that to answer that question eventually, there's a factor that we often, well, physicists or science students often don't take into consideration, which is the idea of spirituality, consciousness, just the idea that we are consciousness, that we are beings, and that's an abstract thing, love, emotions, all of those things are abstract concepts. So it just didn't make sense to me that it was just, mathematical and logical. So there was something that we were missing, and that's consciousness. And that's when I started realizing that maybe everything was a simulation, everything was not, just material, like solid, let's say, but a projection of consciousness, like a creation of perception. So then I started also to question things about us as a collective, like, for example, where do we come from? Why is that we're humans, and why is that we are the way that we are? Did we really evolve from the hominid? And so that's when I realized also that that couldn't be that way, because there has been so much genetic mutations, along the way. We have excelled so much in comparison with other species that, we cannot blame the environment to have caused us to, have the trigger our genetics to mutate, to adapt to itself. First of all, because we didn't become more adapted to the medium in terms of, to the environment, in terms of, our, let's say, abilities to survive. We now use manipulation of nature. Before we were adapted to nature, we didn't need it to manipulate it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, it's that, if we were really, if it was really a response towards a change within the environment, then other animals should have also reacted in a, let's say, extreme way. So, and none of them really did, they followed their own natural path that we were doing. So that's when I started to really realize that we were indeed a hybrid species, that we didn't evolve from the monkey or from the hominid, that we were genetically altered by extraterrestrial species. And that's when the information about the Anunnaki and all these different ETs came to me. And I also observed that thing on an individual perspective with me, because I always felt like different genetically. And I possessed, like psychic abilities that I couldn't explain. I possessed knowledge that I couldn't explain how it came, because it was not that I would go and read books, but it will come to me as a download, So all of these things and characteristics, even like physiological characteristics, didn't make sense to me. So I always felt that it was a mutation, But the only thing that made even more sense than that a mutation, it was that it was a genetic manipulation from extraterrestrial beings, you know. So that's when I started realizing that I was an extraterrestrial hybrid, a human, sorry, hybrid.
Beautiful. Yeah. And can you maybe explain to people who maybe aren't familiar with the hybridization and what that means to be an ET human hybrid? And maybe if you know, like what percentage of your DNA is human and what percentage is ET, and maybe what races specifically you feel um, makes up who you are as a being.
Sure. Well, to be hybrid, it there's many ways to actually be hybrid, starting from the point that we are all hybrids, you know. So there are many ways to become and embrace that, let's say, expression, you know, in our frequency field, in our electromagnetic field, which is aura, you know. One of the first ways, of course, is to have been genetically altered, and this happens to beings that, you know, that let's say accept to this kind of agreements with certain ET beings that want us to, let's say, that they want to give to us this piece of themselves, of information and frequencies and energies of consciousness, so that we can download the consciousness from their own, let's say, you know, collective consciousness, and integrate it in our vessel, in our life, in our own experience, so that we ground it in earth, you know, in the matrix of consciousness of earth, you know, to help, you know, beings advance towards the next step of evolution. But another way to be hybrid, it's really to, let's say, awaken to your multidimensional nature, because we humans are hybrids. We have DNA from different dimensions and from different extraterrestrial beings. So when we choose to go forward that path of awakening of our multidimensional genetic aspects, if we activate them, you know, and awaken them, we can start to express more intensely those aspects of our consciousness that are vibrating in higher levels of existence, and that are at the same time, of course, connected and in origin to these different extraterrestrial civilizations. So, you know, there's many ways to actually be hybrid and be, let's say, express that.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Yes, we are all ET human hybrids on some level. Beautiful. So I would love for you to share maybe when, because I looked on your website and I saw that you have both some artwork and just some recollection of your own contact experiences. If you feel excited to share about when you started having contact with these beings, and any stories or anything along that lines of when you began to become aware that you were having these experiences with these cosmic beings.
Sure. Well, one of the first experiences that I had with contact, it's when I was navigating through all these different topics of, you know, this, I was awakening to the fact that we were souls, that we were, that we had many astral bodies, that we could get out of our physical one. And so one day I will go to bed and I wanted to sleep, but instead of sleeping, I was pulled out of my body. And you know, I was experiencing how there was a being on the other side that wanted to make contact with me and bring me to his own dimension to communicate with me. But I was so scared at the time. I was so scared that it was a negative intention, that I was a negative being, that I resisted that, let's say, experience, that process. So I eventually sleep, you know. But besides going to sleep, I experienced later on, not that day, but I experienced an encounter with certain extraterrestrial positive beings from Arcturus, who get me into their ship to their planet, and they showed me, let's say, their, you know, environment. They showed me like aspect of our planet, their civilization. They showed me how they work, how they look like, you know, etc. And I was surrounded by them, and they were really cute. They were really let's say, loving and sweet. And so they brought me back to the ship because it was time for me to wake up in my vessel. And so I woke up with that experience that was really cute, you know. Other experiences I had with the Grace hybridization agenda, in which they will pull me out of my body and they will show me their kid, I mean, the kids that I will have with them, you know, my hybrid children, and many other also human beings that were also part of the hybrid agendas, you know, like some human beings that I believe it's either Syrians or Pleiadians. And they were pretty much expressing how happy they were that I was finally, let's say, awakening or harmonizing my reality to theirs so that contact was more possible. And other experiences of contact I had, it's with Pleiadian counterpart of mine. We eventually we eventually express love to each other because I happen to believe he's my twin flame. So at least that's what he communicated to me. And so when he visited me at night, he expressed, like, I mean, it was a sexual encounter, you know. He had sex with me, but it was different from, you know, what humans do. It was not focused on the lower chakras, on pleasure or what. It was more, let's say, more heart based, you know. And in that communication, in that encounter that we have, it was pretty much like a really divine, you know, exchange of energy, divine merging of soul and spirit, you know, of our hearts together. And so that was one of my first, let's say, conscious experiences with extraterrestrials, because by then all of them will have been either in the astral or in the dream state. But that was my first experience in which I was actually awake, you know, I was actually conscious of the process and the encounter.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. So for that experience, you were was it a it sounded like it wasn't an astral or dream state experience. Were you did he come to you in your home, or were you how did he present himself to you? Was it in the physical, or were you taken onto a ship with him? I'm just curious what yeah, if it because I've experienced, contact can happen in many different planes or dimensions, like you said.
Sure. It happened actually in my home. It was not my home in my town, Madrid. It was in the village of my grandmother, in which we have a house there, you know. So I was staying there, you know, because I wanted to connect with nature and everything, and that place is perfect for that, you know. So when I went to bed, I remember that I felt paralyzed in bed. I felt like I couldn't move, but it wasn't a negative paralysis. You know, the reason why I was paralyzed is because the frequency is so high when that encounter happens that you feel that you're not, your physical body is, let's say, vibrating at such a high rate that it is not, you're not focusing the movement or the connection with your physical body. It's sort of like resting, you know, that you feel your light body, your higher, let's say, astral bodies, because that's the body that you're accessing in this encounter with the being from a different dimension. You know, you have to harmonize the frequency between both realities. So, you know, the encounter happened when I was awake and I was conscious. I saw him in my third eye. And, you know, it was that experience of being awake. But, you know, after some time, I actually decided that I wanted to see him myself with my own light body. So I, let's say, pull myself out of my physical body, and I, let's say, I astral projected to his own dimension. And that's when we encounter each other and I could see him, you know, and I felt the connection with our own hearts. It was pretty, you know, spiritual. So yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for expanding on that. You mentioned previously being a part of the hybridization program, in that you're aware that you have hybrid children. And I would love to hear about any encounters you've had of seeing them or becoming aware of having hybrid children, because I too am aware of a few of my hybrid children. And just would love to hear someone else's perspective and experience with encountering your hybrid kids.
Sure. Yeah, my first actual hybrid presentation happened also in the astral. And I was actually pulled towards the ship, and I saw that there was another woman who was human acting as a surrogate for what it will become my own hybrid baby. Because what they let me know is that at that moment I wasn't ready to give birth to a baby because of my own physical condition, like my own body, So another woman acted as a surrogate for this baby to be born. So I was present and in the day of the birth that the baby was being born. And when the baby came out of the mother's womb, they took the baby in their own arms, and the baby had really, let's say, soft skin, green skin color. He had big eyes and black eyes, and he was really cute. And one of these people showed it to me, and he presented it like as my child. And what I believe that he had is mantis genetics, from the mantis beings. Um, Another high representation I had, it's when I was on my own home, not on a ship anymore. And it was actually also in the astral plane, not in the dream state, but in the astral state. And this gray being came to me, and he showed to me, he kind of like opened his heart chakra, and he showered me with a lot of love. It was a really intense experience of connection. So I got from that he was a counterpart that was working with me in the hybrid programs, and that we had a child together. So he showed to me this cute baby that was with he had gray skin, he had soft skin. He even let me touch the, let's say, the face of the baby, and it was really soft, really cute. And he had bright eyes. He had this long, let's say, dark bright eyes. And it was almost like a toddler. It was in between the baby and toddler, and he was holding it in his arms and showing it to me. And apart from that baby, there was another child who was already like 5 years old, or even 7, and she looked kind of like me, but with gray DNA, of course. And she was playing around, and I was like parenting, like saying, "Hey, take care, don't walk, don't run, you will hurt yourself." It was like showing me that I was parenting that child. And then another presentation I had, it's with a child who was it was called Sakani, which then I found out later that is another name to this Sasani. And the last one I had recently, it's 2 children. One, it was a female, and one, it was a boy. And they were actually hybrids with Pleiadian DNA, and they had really long blonde hair, and they had purple iris, who was really beautiful. So I love that.
Wow, that's awesome. So, are these how many hybrid children are you aware of having?
Um, 6 or 7.
6, yeah, beautiful. Okay, let's see, what was my next question? What would you say, you feel like the message of the different races that you've maybe worked with as guides or had encounters with? What would you surmise or summarize a message from them, maybe for humanity and their, reasons for working with us or for just being involved with humanity? Do you have any messages or any thing that you feel like is coming through from these beings, and why they're here, and why more and more of us are awakening to or becoming aware of the extraterrestrial presence here in the earth and in the galaxy?
Sure. Well, I think the common message from these beings are actually that it's time for us to shift to uh, the awareness of to reintegrate the awareness that we are the creators of our reality, and that all of the suffering and the conflict that we have experienced so far in our civilization is no longer needed, to explore polarity consciousness, because big times of transformation are coming, of shifting towards let's say higher vibrational frequency of experience of consciousness, in which we no longer need to operate through those dynamics of survival and victimism, in which we believe that things are happening to us and we need to become super strong to survive that, and we need to, let's say, put so much energy to become anything we wish, or get the things we want to achieve. It's no longer a need to operate through those dynamics, but rather become like shift to the idea that we are the creators of our reality. So we're actually awakening to that divinity. They are telling us that we can let go of those belief systems of limitation and disempowerment, and realize that it is all a creation of our own energy and our consciousness. So if we put it back to place in alignment, we no longer need to experience that sort of inner conflict.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like that's the same message I've gotten from these beings when I connect with them, especially on the aspect of remembering the divinity within us and remembering that we possess that creator consciousness from source. Um, let's see what my next question is. Oh, sorry, sorry, my cat in the background is knocking some of my crystals down. It's funny. My next question is, what kind of wisdom or advice would you offer to someone who is aware that they're having either like abduction experiences or contact, and maybe they haven't fully integrated those experiences and are feeling fear around their encounters with these beings, which we know are very high vibrational beings. And I know from my past experiences that when I had some grays in my room, I had been making loving contact with ETs and with beings and calling that in. But in those experiences, because it was such a high frequency, I still experienced some fear, which I've now integrated. So I guess my question is, what would you offer to somebody who is still working through beliefs and thoughts of fear around connecting with these galactic beings?
Well, the first thing that I will tell them is that any interaction, any experience, really, it's like agreed on a higher level. So let's say that the higher mind, we're always having experiences that we are not aware that we agreed on a higher level. So let's say that we are subordinated to the creating, like the direction of our creation from coming from the higher mind. We are, let's say, giving them the power to direct, but that doesn't mean that we are not also creating that in a sense, because we are the higher mind. The only difference is that we have disintegrated that perception, of what we are actually choosing to create or align with. So my advice is that the more that you integrate things in your own self, you will experience that, let's say, reconnection towards your higher mind and become even more aware, even if it's on an intuitive level, that there are certain things that you have, let's say, that you are aligning with for a reason, for exploring it, for, because it's needed for you, because, it's part of your, let's say, life, it's a topic, it's an idea that you chose to explore in this lifetime of yours. So there's really anything to fear, especially with beings from other, let's say, plane of consciousness, because there's a universal law, which is the law of non-intervenience. So if there's an intervention going on, it's because there is a spiritual reason behind it. Even if it's a negative encounter, there's a spiritual reason behind it. So the more that you accept it without losing your power, because if it's experience that you don't wish to experience, then you can empower yourself. You can rearrange agreements and say, hey, I have recreated myself. I have decided that these things are not things that I am aligning with, or maybe I want to experience, but not in a conscious way. So maybe rather, let's say, not do not intervene or what. And if it's still happening, let's say it's because, there's a reason. So the best way to go forward with it is to look at what that experience or encounter is trying to teach you about yourself, about the things that makes you you, that that you're maybe connected to or interested in. And so if you finally agree that you want to have these experiences, or you always wanted, and you still fear these sort of like blockages, you feel like you're expressing fear and not so much love, even if you want to, I recommend you to understand that the reason why sometimes these things happen, it's because there's a difference in frequency between the level of perception of the physical mind and the higher mind and other bodies, yourself. So when there is that process, your higher self or other aspect of yourself that are of a higher frequency are having many of these kinds of experiences almost, really often, let's say really often, but when you agree that one of those experiences are actually perceived and integrated by the higher mind, by the physical mind, your conscious self, let's say, there needs to be a process of let's say, of shifting between your physical awareness and that higher awareness. So to get those, to harmonize those different states of consciousness, the transition is needed. So that's when you say that you had an experience. You're always having experiences, but only then it's when you say that you're having an encounter or an experience, because it's when you have become aware of them and integrated into your physical awareness. So because the ego, it's a physical brain and it's all about survival, it's the survival mechanism, the flight or fight response. When these kind of transitions are being experienced, the ego and the physical mind fears its own death. So it will do whatever to fight that experience, to fight that process, to, let's say, go back to a state of comfort. So if you tune into the inner peace, let's say, of your own heart, if you tune into your own heart space chakra and connect to the fact that, you are not going to die, anything that's going to happen, it's all fine, you're loved, you're protected, then it's when you could easily, go forward with these experiences without having so much resistance.
Sorry, my dogs are going crazy here, so I just wanted to mute for a second. Yeah, that's a beautiful answer to that. And my next question is, what beings do you feel like, what races do you feel like you work with most commonly, as maybe guides, or just that come to you when you're doing your work and just being going throughout your human experience? What races or beings do you feel most closely connected to?
Well, in general, the general answer to that question will be that it depends on my own specific spiritual process, because when we go through this process of awakening of our own multidimensional nature, we start to realize that we're not just coming from one race or one let's say star system or what. We realize that we have many different connections, because our DNA, it's just a world of itself. It's a matrix of different aspects of consciousness, different frequency patterns, different origins, etc. So in that beautiful process of awakening of different aspects of it, it's we realize that, in each moment and each, let's say, cycle of evolution that we may be going through, there isn't a specific connection that we're making. There isn't a specific connection that is the strongest, and for the reason of us integrating that consciousness into our experience to, let's say, feed the earth matrix with that, spiritual, let's say, energy, so that it becomes more abundant, on consciousness. So, for example, me, I started connecting with Andromeda. That was one of my first experiences. So at that time, the Andromedans were the ones who were working more hand in hand with me. And I will realize that even as a conscious channeler, the messages that I will get as downloads will be more of an Andromeda, let's say, nature. They will sound like what an Andromeda guide will say, because I was channeling, I was connecting towards that, let's say, I was connecting to that star system. So that's eventually what I was downloading, to my own system. And then it's when I started with the Arcturians, and then the Anunnaki and the great hybrids, the Pleiadian and all the runs, inner earth people, a mix of many different beings. So, it depends ultimately in what process are you going for, what aspect of yourself you're activating or awakening to.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Different energies, I guess, for different moments in your life, because we are connected to all of them, even if we're not consciously aware of that. And let's see, where was I gonna go next? So what type of work do you find yourself doing, I guess, in a day-to-day basis that you feel like lights you up? I know you have a bunch of different offerings on your website, but I would love to hear a little bit about how you share your gifts with the world here.
I love to be always conscious channeling. That's one of my, let's say, most favorite, let's say, spiritual gifts or works to offer, because it comes so easy to me, and not just because I'm a psychic medium and it's an ability that I have, but because there's so much passion that I have for it. There's so much excitement to know things, to explore the structure of consciousness and existence, and to give it away to beings so that they can apply it to better their lives. That it's really it comes really easy for me, and it comes as a really exciting thing. So that's my favorite work, I would say.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love all of the different ET and cosmic art that you have on your website. I just love looking at the detail and the just vibration that each of those artwork pieces you've done have brought through. Those are really amazing. So I definitely recommend anyone who's watching this replay, check those out on your website. Oh, my next question is, have you, I guess, let's see, how do I want to word this? So since, I guess, becoming aware of your multidimensional nature and all of these different galactic aspects of yourself, have you felt that your family and friends here on Earth have been accepting and open to those things about you? Or how have you navigated that process of kind of bringing these things or talking about these things that maybe some people have never heard about or think are really bizarre and out there? How have you navigated that personally with just people in your life that, like family and friends? Have you experienced any resistance to sharing or expressing those things with those people?
At the beginning, when I was in school, I had no filter, so I will run towards my friends and be like, hey, I experienced this, I remember this, and this is how it actually works, this is who we truly are, and all those things. So having no filter in a class full of students that are 15, 16 years old, who are definitely not ready, some of them, towards these topics, because they have been so programmed or so disconnected to these things, by the media and the earth experience. um it made it so difficult. It was definitely so hard, to connect with my friends on that matter. So I will keep it to myself eventually, because I realized that, I could offer information, so that maybe planting seeds of consciousness, planting seeds of, possibilities. There was maybe someone who will say, well, I think that this is interesting, maybe I will give it a chance, but I will not, let's say, I will keep like a little bit of distance. So because some of them even thought that I was crazy to the point of needing medication. And I really didn't like that. So I eventually decided that it was better for me to, let's say, share a little bit of it, but to a degree that it was not that much, like little pieces of information. Um, and so the more that I shifted my, let's say, circle of friends, the more that I realized that, some are ready, some are not, some will accept it, some will not, so some will judge you, some will even, let's say, make a little fun of you at the back. um but some, like, definitely might accept it to the point that they even become interested in it, because I also experienced that um friends that I met for other kind of different interests found that the thing that I was telling them, it's something that they already saw or heard before, and that it was definitely interesting to the point that they wanted to know more from me, and I will share with them different information on the matters, and they will eventually just love the conversational things and go that way, follow that, let's say, go to the rabbit hole and discover all those things by themselves, take a similar path. So I think it's worth the I think it's worth the try, that we communicate the things that, not just the things that we know. It's not just things that we know, it's things that we are, that we all are, and that we have forgotten eventually. So I think that it's worth the try, to communicate it and share that with people and family.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's powerful and important for us to speak our truth, even if people might reject us and call us crazy for what we're sharing or what we're passionate about. So you mentioned the Essassani race, which I'm sure you're familiar with Bashar and all of that work. And Bashar mentions about us, humanity, and the hybrids eventually coming together to create the sixth hybrid race. And I would love to hear your thoughts on if you see Earth moving towards a place where we are fully integrated as a member of the galactic society, where we have humans and these ET species living and working among each other on Earth, and just more of us being aware and actively a part of this interstellar alliance, if you will, with these beings. Because in my mind, in my heart, that's definitely, my desire for us to move into that space where we we are consciously a part of this family, as humanity and Earth moves into its next stage of evolution. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on that.
Sure. Yes, I'm familiar with that information about the hybrid landing and the becoming of the sixth hybrid race. I have to say though that, I try to make always a difference between the holistic idea of becoming, like, having contact with ETs, and the whole hybrid narrative, because it's true that it's part of it, but it's not the whole idea of it. To me, the idea of ET contact and, becoming part of interstellar alliances and all of this, um, I think that's a general thing, and it's open to many different races and personal connections, because not everyone is, let's say, interested in the hybrids especially, but may also be more interested in the Pleiadians or the Arcturians and the Andromedans. And so I try to make that difference, like ET contact is like more general, let's say, more like bigger. But when it comes to the ET hybridization agenda, the great agenda of hybrids, like landing to Earth, I think that's really exciting. And, of course, I think that not every parent will accept the idea of having a child. And that's something that, eventually, if the children doesn't get accepted by their own parents, they will find another one, because there are many people in the community excited to treat, to raise hybrid children's hybrid children and work with them and learn from them. So I think there's no problem in that. But yeah, I just think that it's really important that everyone aligns their own belief systems, check if they um, check if they prefer the idea of raising it or not, because maybe right now they're not ready like me, but maybe in the future they are. And so to ultimately to understand that that hybrid children are not as dependent as our own children. They're more mature. So parenting is definitely nothing to do with what we do right now with our own children. They are more independent, they're more mature, they can, they are really aware of how they created their reality. So I promise them it will not be that hard. So, it might change minds, I don't know. but yeah, like I believe it's an interesting narrative, and it's an interesting, probable future. And it seems to be what we have decided on a collective level, because many beings are like thinking that maybe they are investive. And to be honest, if they think that that's something they don't prefer, then there are many other timelines that they can explore. Perhaps contact with Pleiadians or Turians, ancient races. There are many possibilities, because we have that free will. We are so diverse, and we are so different altogether, that it's a gift that we can all shift to different timelines and different futures. So if one does not resonate with the hybrids, maybe they can contact other beings. And if one doesn't resonate with other beings, maybe they can just tune into the hybrids. And yeah, that's what I think. And yes, I'm really excited to experience that landing, if it gets to happen soon, because one of the things that I have been meditating myself on a personal note is that, the collective needs to process a lot the fact that we are created by ETs, and that there are other beings and civilizations more advanced than us. And I think that those are things that are so shocking to the public, to the collective, that perhaps they're having a lot of great expectations on us, because I heard that they were planning to make the landing on the 2033 or something. And to me that sounds like really soon, which is really exciting. I don't mind that if that happens that soon. But I feel that people need to process this more deeply. So perhaps we will make it, and perhaps a little later. We don't know when it will happen, but all we know is that it's a possibility, and it's what we have agreed upon and where we are orienting ourselves. So yeah, I think the more we align with the hybrid consciousness, the more that we will be, let's say, ready to receive them here physically with us.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good point. And yeah, I've heard that the whole timeline of them landing, or whatever you want to call it, that's just a predicted window of possibility, which I think is dependent on humanity's receptivity and preparation to being open to receive and know that information without it being harmful or really disruptive to our consciousness. Because I think, like you said, there are many people out there who this information would be and is truly shocking, to find out that we are not the only life in the universe, and that there are other beings who are both more technologically evolved than us, but also more spiritually and just evolved in their consciousness, which, yeah, that can be a big shock to many people, just to find out that this stuff is not, just something in a movie. And I guess the final question that I have, that comes to mind is the idea of um, nature and technology. And from my understanding and remembrance of what has taken place on our planet in the past, different civilizations have, in a sense, not had a balanced approach to expanding and using technology in a way that's harmonious with nature. And I feel like a lot of what we are doing here on the earth, or those of us who are star seeds and those of us who are awakened, feel a strong connection to the earth and to nature, and preserving nature in a way where we don't go down a timeline where we potentially destroy our planet. And I feel like it's really important for us to, as we advance in technology, which is happening as a natural part of evolution, that it's really important for us to, yeah, not get out of balance and remember that we are nature, and to honor the earth and honor nature and honor that organic aspect of ourselves, and approach technology from a balanced way. Because I know the civilizations and the beings like the Greys, for example, they went down a parallel version of earth where they I think abused technology and destroyed their planet, and were no longer able to reproduce. And I think one of the purposes of them coming into our reality and working with us is to help warn us from making that mistake again. So I would love to hear any thoughts or reflections that you have on, yeah, just that balancing of nature and technology, and maybe how we can embody and integrate that, within ourselves, so that we, remember that all creation, all life is sacred, including nature, including, what's here, what we have here on earth. So yeah, anything that you'd like to share on that, I would love to hear your perspective.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I eventually channeled from my higher mind, it's that, you know, to connect with nature, we have to do it through our own nature. And how we do that, it's being as natural as we can, you know. So as you see, nature, it's a reflection of us. We are nature. So the more that we awaken to our own nature, the more that we'll be harmonizing, with nature itself, because it's us also. So I think that balance between technology and, nature is attained by our own evolution of our consciousness, our own awakening to who we truly are. Because any being that is connecting, that is aligning to their own true essence, will never have any intentions that are negative or ignorant, like towards nature, towards that aspect that is also oneself. So it's that connected. So I believe that, it will go directly hand in hand with the awakening of our collective consciousness. Because one of the things that Grace did with this, let's say, development of technology in comparison with the way that it will treat, they will develop that connection with nature. It's when they decided that they will disconnect from their own nature, their human nature. So they basically decided that they wanted to manipulate their genetics instead of letting them mutate naturally. And they didn't want it to experience the emotional aspect, which is what makes us us, our species, and it's a superpower, I believe. So that's how they actually reflected, back, to in their own physical reality, that disconnection with themselves, in the strained environment.
Yeah, definitely. That was really beautiful response to that. And on this topic, how would you suggest that somebody who's listening to this now get in touch with their true nature and their true essence? If maybe somebody tuning into this is feeling like they maybe aren't as connected to their true self or their higher mind as they would like to be, what tools or wisdom would you suggest somebody do or yeah do to connect with that true essence?
I will I will tell them that the way towards that reconnection with their nature, it's by integrating all the lies or the aspects of their consciousness that are vibrating in fear, in unconscious, back to conscious. And how you do it, it's by basically looking at those beliefs that you're holding about yourself, such as Bashar teaches, that you look at those aspects of yourself that are not harmonic with you, that are not vibrating in love and in harmony, and you say, well, and you make that conscious movement, that spiritual movement or shift of actually letting them go as not part of who you truly are, something that teaches you that you're completely the opposite by definition. So, by letting go those lies about yourself and connecting to your true self, to the things that really makes it you and who you are, I believe that's how you eventually become, in contact with your own nature back.
Awesome, I love that. Yeah, integrating the fear-based beliefs and letting go of all that isn't us is so important. Well, this has been an awesome interview. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your wisdom. And if you have any final thoughts or anything that's on your heart that you would like to share with anybody tuning in, I'd love to hear that. If not, I would love for you to share how people can contact you or find you if they're interested in learning more about you and your work and the channeling and art and all of the different offerings you share with us.
Sure, thank you. Well, I wanted to, as a final note, I wanted to, yes, to share my page. And so the domain is www.marinaseren.com. And in there, I share, I have a blog in which I share channelings. I share, posts about things that I have downloaded, that I received from my guides or, from other beings as information. And I share my extraterrestrial artwork. I have a gallery of also other different things such as UFO sightings, UFO marks that I got, and sketches that I made from experiences and encounters that I had. And I also have an about page in which you can see the summary of my story if you're interested. I have also posted some videos, some links of other videos in which I'm also interviewed by other channels. And so that I, share more aspects of my experience and my work. And I offer I have a service list in one of the pages that in which I offer an energy reading, for example, or a channel session or a spiritual coaching or nature portrait. So all those services, you can check them on the page. And if you're interested, sorry, you can just email me there. You can just write me an email and I will hand you more information about the service.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I definitely plan on reaching out to you for some ET art. And yeah, you are just, thank you so much for being here. You're just such a beautiful being, and love your energy and the way that you speak and share. And thank you for being with us here on Earth at this exciting and pivotal time. And I'll go ahead and stop the interview here, and I'll leave all of the information in my description box, and we'll link you to Marina's website. Thank you again for sharing with us. It's been such a powerful interview, and I'll see you guys in the next video.